Hello everyone, and welcome to Bookish Babbles, the podcast where we reread our favorite books and chat about them. I'm your host Allison, and without further ado, let's get started. Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode 25. Oh god, please forgive the bad joke, I'm so sorry. But yes, we are on episode 25 of Bookish Babbles. Today we are talking about chapters 4 to 6 of Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. Woo! So, and because this is the 25th official episode, not counting, all the bonus episodes that I've done, I thought it would be cool to do something fun. So for those of you who know, in the world of Panem, for the Hunger Games, the Capitol does a quarter quell every 25 years, where they put a special twist on the Hunger Games. For example, for the 50th Games, which is the year Haymitch won, each district had to provide double the amount of tributes, and we learned at some point, I forget when, but we do learn that for the 25th Games, each district had to hold an election where the adults chose which kids were going to be the tributes that year, which sounds like a nightmare. So I thought it would be fun if you guys got something to vote on. So you know that I like to do book tags for bonus episodes. So I thought it would be fun if you guys got to choose the next one I did. So I will be posting a poll on Instagram. So, of course, bookishbabbles_podcast. It'll be linked in the show notes.
Hey guys, it's Allison in editing. So I'm also going to put the poll on Spotify as well. So it'll be available for the next 2 weeks. So that way it's just not on Instagram stories because I'm dumb and I forgot you do polls on Instagram stories. So anyway, yes, don't forget to check it on Spotify as well. Anyway, back to the episode.
You can go on there and check it out, and you'll have to go to the poll to find out which tags you get to choose from. Totally, because I want it to be a surprise and not because, I forgot to pick the 3, but whatever, it's fine. Either way, it'll be there for you to vote on. So yes, that'll be fun. And what else is going on in the world? We are still waiting for Dr. Gall casting news. I swear they have her cast, but they just don't want to tell us. Anyway, let's just get into this week's episode. So last week, Katniss and Peta are barely on speaking terms since getting home from the games. President Snow makes an unexpected visit and threatens Gale's life, so now Katniss has to try and convince the country that she is without a doubt desperately in love with Peeta, so, she can quell all the potential uprisings. And this week, Katniss and Peta officially start the victory tour, and they reconcile enough to be on speaking terms. Yay. Katniss gives a moving speech in District 11 and ultimately fails to quell the uprisings in the districts. So, with all that being said, let's dive into Chapter 4. So we pick up right where the last chapter left off. Katniss has her talk with Haymitch and realizes that in order to keep up the Star-Crossed Lovers Act they need to keep her loved ones alive, she'll have to marry Peeta. And Haymitch tells her what I think in that moment we're all thinking, which is, you could do a lot worse. And I mean, he has a point. Frankly, I don't see how you can do any better. Peeta's the closest to a perfect man I think you can get. But anyway, that's not the point, because there's nothing wrong with Peeta. Obviously, if I was in a situation where I had to marry someone, I hope it would be someone like him. But like Katniss says, the problem is that the choice is taken away from her. Right at the beginning of Book 1, we learn that Katniss never plans to marry or have children because she doesn't want to risk them getting reaped for the Hunger Games. And living in District 12, there are very limited career options where you can live anywhere. And you can't move. You have to live in the district that you're born into for the rest of your life, unless you choose to become a peacekeeper. So choosing who you marry and or whether or not you want to get married is one of the few big life decisions Katniss gets to make. And now even that's taken away from her. And now that she's a victor, the chance of any children she has going into the games is now even greater because it's happened far too frequently in the past for it to be a coincidence. Gale's sure that it's rigged on purpose so that, it adds extra drama to the games. And since Katniss has caused quite a bit of trouble in the capital, yeah, her potential children would definitely be selected. She figures Haymitch came to that same conclusion at some point in his life. After all, he never got married or had any kids. So she starts thinking about running away to escape all this, but now's not the time to be making escape plans because, she's got a tour to focus on. Katniss doesn't get a ton of sleep, and before you know it, Effie is waking her up nice and early to get her ready because, it's another big, big, big day. Their first stop on the tour is District 11, Thresh and Rue's home, because, we gotta get the emotional damage in as soon as possible. Anyway, wanna know another reason that the capital sucks? The double beauty standards. Because Peeta gets to sleep in because apparently he needs less work than Katniss. She's the only one who has to have her hair waxed off her legs and other parts of her body other than the hair on her head, obviously. And this is when she remembers that in the arena, most of the boys got to keep their body hair except for their facial hair. Turns out the capital gives all the male tributes something to prevent them from growing beards because, some of them are definitely old enough at that point to grow one. Also, they give something to the girls so that they don't menstruate while they're in the arena, and anyone know where I can get some of that? Anyway, it just adds to another level of fucked upness to the games by not letting the boys grow beards. The capital wants to make sure that they look as young and innocent as possible. Just, really highlight the whole innocent kids dying thing they got going on. So yeah, moving on from that thought. So Katniss's prep team, they are not morning people, which leads me to believe that they're not complete psychopaths. Flavius makes a comment about how it's a shame Cinna won't let them do any alterations on Katniss and they have to wait till she's older, which I know that they just want to make Katniss look as beautiful as possible, but she has no interest in doing any of the crazy alterations, so not a good idea, Flavius. Needless to say, Katniss is in a terrible mood by lunchtime and isn't very talkative, though people still try to bring her into the conversations. It doesn't work. At some point, the train has to stop, though not for fuel. They are now delayed at least an hour because something in the engine needs to be fixed. And this naturally sets Effie off since, it completely messes with her schedule. And this is what makes Katniss snap. She yells at Effie, saying how no one cares, and this stuns everyone. Even Haymitch is taken aback by the outburst, so Katniss storms out, leaving the train, and walks along the tracks. And already she regrets snapping at Effie like that. After all, it isn't Effie who Katniss is actually angry with. So after a couple 100 yards, Katniss plops down onto the ground and stares into the distance and fantasizes a bit about having a bow and arrow and just leaving right then and there. After a while, she hears footsteps behind her, and assuming that it's Haymitch, she says out loud that she's not in the mood for a lecture. Plot twist, it's not Haymitch, it's Peeta. And as usual, he has the perfect response by saying, "I'll try to keep it brief." And then he continues to just be even more perfect by apologizing for the way he's been acting. So I'm just going to read the conversation, and it starts on page 51. So it starts with Katniss saying, "I thought you were Haymitch," I say. "No, he's still working on that muffin." I watch as Peeta positions his artificial leg. "Bad day, huh?" "It's nothing," I say. He takes a deep breath. "Look, Katniss, I've been wanting to talk to you about the way I acted on the train. I mean the last train. The one that brought us home. I knew you had something with Gale. I was jealous of him before I even officially met you, and it wasn't fair to hold you to anything that happened in the games. I'm sorry." His apology takes me by surprise. It's true that Peeta froze me out after I confessed that my love for him during the games was something of an act. But I don't hold that against him. In the arena, I played that romance angle for all it was worth. There had been times when I didn't honestly know how I felt about him, and I still don't really. I'm sorry too, I say. I'm not sure for what exactly. Maybe because there's a real chance I'm about to destroy him. There's nothing for you to be sorry about. You were just keeping us alive. But I don't want us to go on like this, ignoring each other in real life and falling into the snow every time there's a camera around. So I thought if I stopped being so, wounded, we could take a shot at just being friends, he says. All my friends are probably going to end up dead, but refusing Peeta wouldn't keep him safe. Okay, I said. His offer does make me feel better. I love this so much. Peeta acknowledges what he did wrong, he owned up to it, he's honest with her, and even validates her and empathizes with Katniss' situation. So, see guys, this is why we love Peeta. Guys, men, do better. Be less of a Gale and more of a Peeta. So, Katniss is glad that they've reconciled, and like she said, she feels better. However, she also wishes that this conversation had happened before President Snow's visit, since now she knows that the two of them just being friends isn't an option anymore. Peeta, being the emotional, intelligent person that he is, senses her unease and asks if she's okay. And Katniss, being the stubborn, closed-off person she is, doesn't say anything. So then they have the iconic conversation where they tell each other their favorite colors. It is such a small scene, but we all love it. So it starts with Peeta saying, "Let's start with something more basic. Isn't it strange that I know you'd risk your life to save mine? But I don't know what your favorite color is," he says. A smile creeps onto my lips. "Green. What's yours?" "Orange," he says. "Orange? Like Effie's hair?" I say. "A bit more muted," he said. "More like sunset." Sunset. I can see it immediately. The rim of the descending sun, the sky streaked with soft shades of orange. Beautiful. I remember the tiger lily cookie, and now that Peeta is talking to me again, it's all I can do not to recount the whole story about President Snow, but I know Haymitch wouldn't want me to. I'd better stick to small talk. Everyone's always raving about your paintings. I feel bad that I haven't seen them," I say. "Well, I've got a whole train car full." He rises and offers me his hand. "Come on." So they walk back to the trains holding hands. That's an extremely important detail for all of you to know, and not just because, I'm a biased Everlark shipper. What? Who said that? Anyway, Katniss apologizes to Effie and lays it on thick. Effie accepts graciously and only rambles about how important it is for someone to keep up the schedule for 5 minutes. So Katniss really got off easy, so good for her. After that, she and Peeta go a few cars down so that he can show her his paintings, and it's immediately obvious to Katniss that Peeta has painted the games. She describes it as not being obvious to anyone who wasn't in the arena, but she gets it. And it's going to sound weird, but I think the best way I can relate to this is being on stage. Like, the audience sees the show happening, but they're spectators who watch from a distance, like how the audience in Panem watches the Hunger Games on TV. But the actors on stage know it in a much more intimate way. Because I was a theater kid growing up, so naturally I did every show my high school put on, and I even did a couple shows in college as well. And some of the most vivid details I remember are just like knowing where the cracks in the floor and stage are, or just how it feels to stand in the wings and how the curtain looks up close. Like, it's like the stage in a way that the audience never will. And I imagine that's kind of how it feels for the tributes, except less traumatic, because no one was in literal life or death danger while I was doing shows on stage. I hope that analogy makes sense. But anyway, the painting that Katniss describes as being the non-obvious ones are things like the dry pond bed, Peeta's hands digging for roots, and water dripping through the caves. And the paintings that anyone would recognize are images like, the green-eyed mutt that looks like Glimmer, Clove organizing her knives, and, most of all, pictures of Katniss. Katniss says that she doesn't like them since, she tries really hard to forget the games, and it's just interesting to see how differently she and Peeta react, because Katniss actively wants to forget the games, and Peeta processes the games through his art, which is really relatable and often how I process things, though it's usually through writing since I can barely draw stick figures. But One thing the two of them do have in common is that they both consistently have nightmares, which is how Peeta can paint everything in such great detail, is because he sees it every night in his dreams. And he tells himself that by painting them, it makes him less afraid of going to sleep. And I just love how realistic that feels, because PTSD is no joke, and the healing journey is always messy. And Peeta saying that he's not sure if painting the arena helps, I don't know, I think it just shows that when traumatic things happen to you, you're not just going to be fine after a little while. The aftermath just sucks. And after going through something like the Hunger Games, yeah, the nightmares are going to stay with them for a long time. I mean, look at Haymitch. It's been over 20 years and he still sleeps with a knife. Anyway, Katniss and Peeta, after that, go to the last train car and they get their first look at District 11. And the first thing that they see is a tall 35-foot fence with coils of barbed wire on top, and there are these big metal plates that would make it impossible to burrow under the fence, so it's very unlike the one back in District 12. And there are even multiple guards at the watchtowers. And also the district is huge. Katniss realizes that the kids they see on TV for the reapings every year must be just a sampling of the actual population. So she wonders if they have, like preliminary drawings or, to pick the tributes ahead of time or something. But no time to dwell on that. They got to get ready for the ceremony, and Effie goes over the day's schedule. Their entire public appearance will be on stage outside of what Effie calls the veranda. And Peeta and Katniss will be introduced. The mayor will give a speech, and they will give the scripted thank yous. And it's also expected that if a victor had any special allies from whichever district they're visiting, they should add some personal comments. And obviously, since this is District 11, Katniss should say something about Rue, but she struggles to think of what to say. And when the train arrives at the station, there's no welcoming committee, just a bunch of peacekeepers to immediately usher them to the back of the truck. And Effie complains that they're being treated like criminals. They're taken inside the Justice Building, and there's no time to look around. They're led to the front door, and Katniss and Peeta get mics clipped onto them, and it's showtime. The first thing that Katniss notices is that there are a bunch of banners on the building, mostly used to cover the neglected state. And there are special platforms constructed for the families of the fallen tributes by the stage. On Thresh's side, there are two people, an old woman who must be his grandmother and a young woman who's probably his sister. On Rue's side, there are her parents and 5 younger siblings, and I'm already crying. Don't mind me. Anyway, the applause dies down, and two little girls give each Katniss and Peeta a bouquet of flowers. Katniss gives the scripted thank yous. Peeta adds his own personal comments, and now how thankful he is about how Thresh and Rue helped keep Katniss alive. And then Peeta hesitates for just a moment, and then he says something that clearly is not written on the cards. So it starts on page 59 where Peeta says, "It can in no way replace your losses, but as a token of our thanks, we'd like for each of the tribute's families from District 11 to receive 1 month of our winnings every year for the duration of our lives." The crowd can't help but respond with gasps and murmurs. There is no precedent for what Peeta has done. I don't even know if it's legal. He probably doesn't know either, so he didn't ask in case it isn't. As for the families, they just stare at us in shock. Their lives were changed forever when Thresh and Rue were lost, but this gift will change them again. A month of tribute winnings can easily provide for a family for a year. As long as we live, they will not hunger. I look at Peeta, and he gives me a sad smile. I hear Haymitch's voice. You could do a lot worse. At this moment, it's impossible to imagine how I could do any better. The gift, it is perfect. So when I raise up on my tiptoe to kiss him, it doesn't seem forced at all. And another reason, just right there, why we love Peeta so much. So after that, the mayor presents them with a plaque. Just as the ceremony is about to end, one of Rue's sisters catches Katniss's eye. She looks about 9, and she looks almost exactly like Rue. This girl is looking at Katniss reproachfully, and Katniss realizes it's because she hasn't spoken. And I just have to read this next moment. I can't help it. I'm sorry. A wave of shame rushes through me. The girl is right. How can I stand there, passive and mute, leaving all of the words to Peeta? If she had won, Rue would never have let my death go unsung. I remember how I took care in the arena to cover her with flowers, to make sure her loss did not go unnoticed. But that gesture will mean nothing if I don't support it now. Wait! I stumble forward, pressing the plaque to my chest. My allotted time for speaking has come and gone, but I must say something. I owe too much. And even if I had pledged all my winnings to the families, it would not excuse my silence today. Wait, please. I don't know how to start, but once I do, the words rush from my lips as if they've been forming in the back of my mind for a long time. I want to give my thanks to the tributes of District 11, I say. I look at the pair of women on Thresh's side. I only ever spoke to Thresh one time, just long enough for him to spare my life. I didn't know him, but I always respected him. For his power, for his refusal to play the games on anyone else's terms but his own. The careers wanted him to team up with them from the beginning, but he wouldn't do it. I respect him for that. For the first time, the old hunched woman, is she Thresh's grandmother? Raises her head and a trace of a smile plays on her lips. The crowd has fallen silent now, so silent that I wonder how they manage it. They must all be holding their breaths. I turn to Rue's family. But I feel as if I did know Rue, and she'll always be with me. Everything beautiful brings her to mind. I see her in the yellow flowers that grow in the meadow by my house. I see her in the mocking jays that sing in the trees. But most of all, I see her in my sister Prim. My voice is undependable, but I am almost finished. Thank you for your children. I raise my chin to address the crowd. And thank you all for the bread. I stand there feeling broken and small, thousands of eyes trained on me. There is a long pause. Then from somewhere in the crowd, someone whistles Rue's 4-note mockingjay tune, the one that signaled the end of the workday in the orchards, the one that meant safety in the arena. By the end of the tune, I have found the whistler, a wizened old man in a faded red shirt and overalls. His eyes meet mine. What happens next is not an accident. It's too well executed to be spontaneous, because it happens in complete unison. Every person in the crowd presses the 3 middle fingers of their left hand against their lips and extends them to me. It's our sign from District 12, the last goodbye I gave Rue in the arena. Once again, thank you, Suzanne Collins, for making me feel things. Holy shit, that part gives me chills every time, whether I'm reading that in the book or watching it in the movie. Just, anything to do with Rue, I swear, I just get so emotional. I'm fine. Oh dear. Okay, so, Katniss is obviously touched by the gesture, but she also feels a really heavy sense of dread since, Snow obviously won't be happy with this. After all, it's a very public salute to the girl who defied the Capitol. And there's nothing else to do but read the last page of the chapter. I know this has been very, reading heavy, this chapter, but I can't help it. And we might as well, because gosh dang it, this book is just so good. How dare Suzanne Collins be such a good writer? The full impact of what I've done hits me. It was not intentional. I only meant to express my thanks, but I have elicited something dangerous, an act of dissent from the people of District 11. This is exactly the kind of thing I'm supposed to be diffusing. I try to think of something to say to undermine what just happened, to negate it, but I can hear the slight burst of static indicating my microphone has been cut off, and the mayor has taken over. Peeta and I acknowledge a final round of applause. He leads me back toward the doors, unaware that anything has gone wrong. I feel funny and have to stop for a moment. Little bits of bright sunshine dance before my eyes. Are you all right? Peeta asks. Just dizzy. The sun was so bright, I say. I see his bouquet. I forgot my flowers, I mumble. I'll get them, he says. I can, I answer. We would be safe inside the Justice Building by now if I hadn't stopped, if I hadn't left my flowers. Instead, from the deep shade of the veranda, we see the whole thing. A pair of peacekeepers dragging the old man who whistled to the top of the steps, forcing him to his knees before the crowd, and putting a bullet through his head. So yeah, when we get back, we'll unpack the aftermath of all that. Hey guys, it's Allison from A Different Point in Time, and I'm here to bring you another random recommendation. This book I'm going to recommend is literally the last book I just finished reading this morning. So, it is called The People We Keep by Allison Larkin, and it's still summer, and it's kind of a summery book because there are a lot of road trip elements involved. So, I think it'd be a good book, and it was a solid 4 out of 5 stars. For me, it's a really good emotional read, and I recommend it, so I'll read you guys the summary. Little River, New York, 1994. April is living in a motorless motorhome that her father won in a poker game. Failing out of school, picking up shifts at Margot's Diner, she's left fending for herself in a town where she's never quite felt at home. When she borrows her neighbor's car to perform at an open mic night, she realizes her life could be much bigger than where she came from. After a fight with her dad, April packs her stuff and leaves for good, setting off on a journey to find a life that's all hers. Driving without a chosen destination, she stops to rest in Ithaca. Her only plan is to survive, but as she looks for work, she finds a kindred sense of belonging at a Cafe de Candace, a local coffee shop. Still, somehow, it doesn't make sense for her that life could be this way. The more she falls in love with her friends in Ithaca, the more she can't shake the feeling that she'll hurt them the way she's been hurt. As April moves through the world, meeting people who feel like home, she chronicles her life in the songs she writes and discovers that where she came from doesn't dictate who she has to be. So yeah, really good book. Music, road trippy vibes, has a nice cover. Recommend The People We Keep by Allison Larkin. So that being said, back to the episode. And we are back. So after that sudden and traumatic chapter ending, we pick up right where it left off. Katniss and Peta watch the old man crumble to the ground right before they're blocked off by a wall of peacekeepers who push them back toward the door. As soon as they're back inside the Justice Building, Effie asks them what happened, because according to her, the live feed they were watching cut off right after Katniss gave her speech. So that meant they didn't see the District 11 citizens give the three-finger salute, but they did hear the gunfire. Peeta lies, claiming that nothing happened and that it was only a truck backfiring. And as soon as he says that, 2 more gunshots go off. So, not the best cover-up lying job right there. That was a weird name for it, but whatever. We're keeping it in the episode. This sends Katniss into a slight panic, naturally. Now she's, worried about who else got shot. Haymitch immediately leads Katniss and Peta upstairs. They drop off their gifts and microphones in the room that had been prepared for them before Haymitch leads them to the very top floor of the building, which is basically the attic that's right under the dome of the Justice Building, and no one's used it for years. Once they're there, Haymitch tells Katniss to tell Peta everything. So she recaps her conversation with Snow and all the unrest in the districts, even tells him about the kiss with Gale, which had to be very awkward, and how the trick with the berries has, basically put all of them in danger. Peta realizes how he's made things worse by offering money to Thresh and Rue's families, then gets rightfully angry at Katniss and Haymitch for not keeping him in the loop. And now it's time for Allison to go off on a tangent and compare book Peeta to movie Peeta. And yes, I did just refer to myself in the third person. You can't stop me. Ha ha ha. I just wrote in my notes, insert evil laugh here. Oh god. So, from my understanding, people who have only seen the movies, someone texted me. Not now. What was I saying? Oh, right. So, from my understanding, people who have only seen the movies think of Peeta as this, boring, nice guy who simps for Katniss and is kind of an overall pushover. And, okay, Peeta is a nice guy, and I mean a real nice guy, not a fake one. Ross Geller, who? What? Who said that? Anyway, Peeta is nice, but he listens to Katniss. He's fine with her taking the lead, so he's not, an insecure, toxic man. Again, Ross. And we saw in the previous chapter, he owns up to his mistakes and does hold himself accountable, but He also does have a backbone. He speaks up when he has to, and gives Katniss and Haymitch shit when necessary, because as much as I love them, they do need it sometimes. So yeah, Peeta is not a sip. A sip? Peeta is not a simp. Case in point, let's look at page 65, everyone. So starts with Peeta saying, "Then I made things worse too, by giving them money," says Peeta. And suddenly he strikes out at a lamp that sits precariously on a crate and knocks it across the room, where it shatters against the floor. "This has to stop, right now. This game you two play, where you tell each other secrets but keep them from me like I'm too inconsequential or stupid or weak to handle them." "It's not like that, Peeta," I begin. "It's exactly like that," he yells at me. "I have people I care about too, Katniss. Family, friends, back in District 12, who will be just as dead as yours if we don't pull this thing off. So after all we went through in the arena, I don't even rate the truth from you?" "You're always so reliably good, Peeta," says Haymitch. "So smart about how you present yourself before the cameras. I didn't want to disrupt that." "Well, you overestimated me, because I really screwed up today. What do you think is going to happen to Rue and Thresh's families? Do you think they'll get their share of our winnings? Do you think I gave them a bright future? Because I think they'll be lucky if they survive the day." Peeta sends something else flying, a statue. I've never seen him like this. "He's right, Haymitch. We were wrong not to tell him, even back in the capital." "Even in the arena, you two had some sort of system worked out, didn't you?" asked Peeta. His voice is quieter now. "Something I wasn't a part of." "No, not officially. I just could tell what Haymitch wanted me to do by what he sent or didn't send," I say. "Well, I never had that opportunity because he never sent me anything until you showed up," says Peeta. I haven't thought much about this. How it must have looked from Peeta's perspective when I appeared in the arena having received burn medicine and bread when he, who was at death's door, had gotten nothing, like Haymitch was keeping me alive at his expense. "Look, boy," Haymitch begins. "Don't bother, Haymitch. I know you had to choose one of us, and I'd have wanted it to be her. But this is something different. People are dead out there. More will follow unless we're very good. We all know I'm better than Katniss in front of the cameras. No one needs to coach me on what to say. But I have to know what I'm walking into," says Peeta. "From now on, you'll be fully informed," Haymitch promises. "I better be." So yeah, pop off, Peeta. Good for you. Also, we did get confirmation in this moment that during the 74th games before the rule change happened, Haymitch did choose to save Katniss over Peeta. Which just sounds so awful. I would not want Haymitch's job, but he could only hope to get one of them home at the time, so he chose Katniss since he knew that's what Peeta would want. And Haymitch ends the conversation by telling Katniss, "You'll see, the choices you have to make if we survive this." Again, reminder to everyone, Haymitch has been a mentor by himself for the past 20-something years, watching kids he feels responsible for die. This man needs a hug, though he might try to stab you first. Anyway, we get another good passage from Katniss starting at the bottom of page 67. "Well, I've learned one thing today. This place is not a larger version of District 12. Our fence is unguarded and rarely charged. Our peacekeepers are unwelcome but less brutal. Our hardships evoke more fatigue than fury. Here in 11, they suffer more acutely and feel more desperation. President Snow is right. A spark could be enough to set them ablaze. Everything is happening too fast for me to process it. The warning, the shooting, the recognition that I may have set something of great consequence in motion. The whole thing is so improbable, and it would be one thing if I had planned to stir things up, but given the circumstances, how on earth did I cause so much trouble?" But no time to dwell on that. We got a dinner to get ready for. And I think the prep team are the only ones in a good mood. They're just excited that they get to go to all these special dinners in the district since they rarely get invited to any cool exclusive events. And I guess they bought the whole, multiple trucks backfiring lie. They get Katniss dressed in a gorgeous pink dress that I want. And as they are all assembling to go down to dinner, Effie is out of sorts, and it doesn't take long for us to learn why. She doesn't appreciate the way that they've all been treated since they arrived. One peacekeeper even poked a gun at her when she was looking around and told her to go back to their quarters. Katniss speculates that this was probably a result of her, Peeta, and Haymitch disappearing earlier, and thinks that it's unlikely their conversation had been monitored, but now it's definitely not safe to use that attic again. And then Katniss spontaneously gives Effie a hug, which I think is a first, and even offers to skip the dinner until Effie gets an apology, which, as an introvert, I see what you're doing, Katniss. You're not as sneaky as you think. But Effie says no, she'll get through it, as we expect her to do. Though Katniss's offer did make her feel better, so that's something at least. Katniss and Peeta reconcile from earlier before going into the dinner, which is good. Then we flash forward through the next days, which are all the same. Wake up, get dressed, wave at cheering crowds, listen to speech, give scripted thank you speech, occasionally get a brief tour, attend to dinner, and back on the train. By the way, I know it's not relevant to the plot, but I would love to see them tour all the different districts just because I love learning more about this world, but no time for that because, Suzanne is a good writer who understands which details we need to know for the story. Katniss and Peeta are linked together the entire time they make public appearances, even quote-unquote get caught sneaking away a few times. They save their miserable, quiet selves for the train. Katniss also notes that in some of the districts you can feel something in the air. She describes it as a rolling boil of a pot about to run over. And the three most notable places where Katniss gets this feeling is in districts 4, 8, and 3. And I don't know about you guys, but I want a book just about District 4. Not only because it's one of my favorite districts, because, I've grown up near the water and going fishing, so, personal bias, I guess. And we would potentially get more Finnick Odair content in that book, which is never a bad thing, but I feel like the history of District 4 would be really interesting, because 4 is one of the career districts. They've been favored by the capital and generally treated better, and yet they're now one of the most rebellious districts. So my, theory, speculation thing is that District 4 was the last to join the official career pack, because I feel like 2 definitely was the first to start training kids to be tributes, given the fact that they make military weapons, are closest to the capital, and a lot of peacekeepers do come from District 2, we later learn in Mockingjay. And then District 1, Fortley, and then District 1 shortly followed Chu's lead. So I think there was probably a brief period of time where the career pack was just the tributes from 1 and 2. And we learned in the previous book that sometimes the careers invite other tributes to join their alliance if they think that particular person would be useful, like how they invited Thresh to join them. And maybe they invited kids from 4 so often that eventually District 4 just, officially became part of the career alliance. But there's still more, recent members than 1 and 2 are. And what's interesting, and maybe I'm just reading too much into this, so bear with me, but all the way back in Ballad, before they get their tribute assignments, Coriolanus specifically says that he wants tributes from either 1 or 2 since they tend to produce the strongest contenders. And he also said he would settle for a tribute from either 11 or 4. And I think it makes sense that tributes from those districts would still be strong contenders because kids from 11 are generally physically strong from, doing hard labor in fields. And they have knowledge about food and which plants are safe to eat. We clearly saw that with Rue. And Thresh stayed in that field that we never explored that no one ever wanted to go near. And he actually gained weight in the arena since he knew which grains to eat. So yeah, they sound like good allies to have in the games. And then for 4, most of the tributes can wield tritons and spears pretty well, so they're generally good fighters, and they can get food better than the kids from 1 and 2 since they know how to fish. So anyway, all this to say is that I feel like 4 and 11 are kind of on the same level in a way, but they choose different paths. 4 chooses the Slytherin path, the best way I can describe it, playing along with the game and using it to their advantage, but then fighting back against the system when they believe there's a real chance to change things. And 11 takes the stubborn Gryffindor approach, not wanting to play along, and they have a strong sense of fairness and honor, which I respect. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting to think about. Hope that made sense. Moving on. where was I? Oh, right. Katniss notices that feeling in the air where she feels like people are finally ready to pop off. And there's a really good passage that starts toward the bottom of page 71, so naturally I'm going to read it out loud for you guys. There is genuine elation in the faces of the people at the sight of us, and under elation, fury. When they chant my name, it's more of a cry for vengeance than cheer. When the peacekeepers move in to quiet an unruly crowd, it presses back instead of retreating, and I know there's nothing I could ever do to change this. No show of love, however believable, will turn this tide. If my holding out those berries was an act of temporary insanity, then these people will embrace insanity too. So yeah, this whole thing is way bigger than Katniss just pulling out some poisonous berries. People have been angry for years, for multiple generations, and you can only push people around so long before they snap, so this was a long time coming. Katniss doing the berry trick just sped up the process, because by now it's too powerful for anyone to quell, so really the task Snow gave Katniss was unfair. And Katniss is clearly not doing well and can't handle the stress of everything, because despite the dinners she's going to, she's clearly not eating very much since Cinna has to take in her clothes at the waist. She's not sleeping very much since the prep team has to put on extra makeup to cover the dark circles under her eyes. And the sleeping pills Effie gives her don't work very well, especially since the drugs just make it harder to wake up when she's having a nightmare, so it just prolongs the nightmares. And being on a train again, and daily facing families of the dead tributes, and heading back to the capital, it makes sense that her nightmares are increasing in intensity. Ironically, this helps the love story narrative, since as a result, Peeta ends up waking Katniss up from her nightmares almost every night now and stays with her until she falls back asleep, and naturally creates gossip on the train. And cue the Everlark feels. Like, this isn't even romantic. It's just two people who genuinely care about each other, comforting each other since they went through something that so few can understand, and it's just so sweet. Anyway, the visits to Districts 1 and 2 are extra awkward, especially in 1 since Katniss is directly responsible for both Glimmer and Marvel's deaths. And by the way, this is the first time Katniss has learned Marvel's name. And again, she probably didn't want to, since knowing Marvel's name would have made, the reality of killing him feel more real. And by the time they get to the capital, they are desperate. They don't have to worry about the reception there, though, from the audience, because, everyone there loves them, and they have no reason to rebel. But everything they do feels just too little too late. Once they're back in their old quarters in the training center, Katniss throws in one more desperate idea, her and Peeta getting married, because it's going to happen anyway, so might as well do it now. Peeta agrees, then disappears into his room, because like Haymitch tells Katniss, as much as Peeta may have dreamed of marrying Katniss one day, he didn't want it to be like this. He wants it to be real, which just makes the ending of the series even more meaningful, but we're not there yet. We still got a lot of shit and trauma to go through first. So that night, they have an interview with Caesar Flickerman, and they end it with Peeta proposing, which the audience naturally goes nuts over, and then Snow shows up to spoil the party. So you guys are probably sick of hearing me read by now, but we have less than a full page of a chapter left, so I have to. So sorry. President Snow himself makes a surprise visit to congratulate us. He claps Peeta's hand and gives him an approving slap on the shoulder. He embraces me, enfolding me in the smell of blood and roses, and plants a puffy kiss on my cheek. When he pulls back, his fingers digging into my arms, his face smiling into mine. I dared to raise my eyebrows. They asked what my lips can't. Did I do it? Was it enough? Was giving everything over to you, keeping up the game, promising to marry Peeta enough? In answer, he gives me an almost imperceptible shake of his head. So, with that being said, time for a break. When we come back, we will talk about Chapter 6. Hey guys, me again with another random recommendation. So, I'm actually going to recommend a manga today, which I don't think I've recommended a manga on this podcast yet, but it is my new favorite thing. If you watch one of my vlogs on YouTube, you'll know this. It's called Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. I think I butchered that name. I'm so sorry, but yeah, the brief summary written on the back is Master Spy Twilight is unparalleled when it comes to going undercover on dangerous missions for the betterment of the world. But when he receives the ultimate assignment to get married and have a kid, he may finally be in over his head. But it is just one of the most heartwarming and stories that I've just read in a while, and I've so far I've read the first 4 volumes. I have all the current volumes now. I'm reading through them, and I pre-ordered the next volume that's coming out in September. But like, if you've been wanting to get into manga, I really recommend Spy Family. It's like one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year, and this is coming from someone who hasn't read a ton of manga. So, yep, really recommend Spy Family. So, with that being said, back to the episode. All right, we are back. So, Katniss realizes she is very, very fucked right now, and that she and everyone she loves is definitely going to suffer and probably be forced to end their subscription to life. So despite all that, Katniss feels a sense of relief because now she no longer has to play the game. Now she has an answer as to whether or not she can convince Snow of her love for Peeta. So now Katniss knows she can resort to desperate measures. And also, I don't know about you guys, but I've had moments when I was just so stressed for a prolonged period of time. Like, it's like my brain overloads and eventually just enters a period of I cannot feel any more stress, so I no longer care. No, I think that's what Katniss might also be feeling a bit of right now. But, so basically, she decides that once she gets back to 12, she needs to start making plans to get her, Gale, both their families, Haymitch, Peeta, and his family to run away into the woods. But Katniss does feel a bit more confident now. She even is able to exchange some witty banter with Snow, which the audience loves. So after all that, they go to the banquet at Snow's mansion. The ceiling is designed to look like the night sky. Musicians are floating on platforms that look like clouds, because why not? And most important, there are tables just full of so much food to try. Katniss's appetite has thankfully returned, so now she wants to try everything. She resolves to try no more than 1 bite per dish, but fails almost immediately at the soup table when she eats a creamy pumpkin soup. While trying to eat everything, a bunch of people want to talk to them. Of course, that's what happens when you're a victor in the capital. You're a celebrity everyone wants to meet. Katniss is annoyed by all the attention, since all these people are talking to her are getting in the way of all the food, and I completely understand. I too would be annoyed if a bunch of random strangers try talking to me when I'm trying to eat delicious food. Also, Katniss's Mockingjay pin has become like the hot new fashion trend in the capital. Many of the guests who greet her show off their Mockingjay accessories, and I love this because it has to be driving Snow so absolutely crazy. Like, all these people wearing the Mockingjay, a bird that he hates, that reminds him way too much of Lucy Gray, obviously, and it's all in his own home, and he can't do anything about it. I think he spends like 99% of the party not making an appearance, and he tells everyone that, it's because he has work to do and a country to run, but we know, Choreo, we know you're triggered by the Mockingjays. Anyway, at some point, Katniss is stuffed, and she's not even close to tasting everything in the room. And just then, she and Peeta meet up with her prep team, and this is when we learn even more fucked up things about capital culture. Flavius offers them a drink that makes them sick so that they can throw up and go back to eating, because, it's what everyone does, so how else can they try everything? And Peeta and Katniss are naturally horrified by this, seeing as they come from District 12, where someone starving to death is a common occurrence. Because, if the capital has enough food for its citizens to waste by constantly throwing it up, then, surely they can spare enough to stop a child from starving to death. So, wanting to get out of the conversation ASAP, Peeta and Katniss go to dance. Luckily, Effie has taught them some popular capital dances. And this is the first time since the night before the 74th games that we hear Peeta say anything like outright rebellious. He says out loud to Katniss that he thinks they might be wrong about trying to subdue things in the districts, which is just really shocking in that moment. Not what Peeta is saying, because we've known since the last book that he hates the Capitol. I mean, after all, he's the one who said the famous line about not wanting to be at peace in their games. It's just that Peeta is so good at keeping his cool and playing the game, it's surprising for him to be angry enough to say something like this out loud. Katniss looks around, but luckily the people around them are too drunk and seem to have noticed what Peeta said, and luckily the camera crew got sidetracked by a shellfish table. I mean, I love sushi, so I would too. Peeta apologizes and recovers his camera-ready face as Portia appears with a man who looks vaguely familiar to Katniss, and it is none other than Plutarch Heavensbee, the new head game maker. Plutarch asks for a dance with Katniss. She doesn't want to, but, you can't say no to the head game maker. Plutarch senses her discomfort and holds her at an arm's length away. They chit-chat for a bit, and after Plutarch makes a joke about avoiding punch, Katniss realizes who he is. He's the game maker who fell in the punch when Katniss shot an arrow at them during her private training session. And they have a wonderful conversation on page 82. Starting with Katniss saying, "Oh, you're the one who..." I laughed. Remember him splashing back into the punch bowl. "Yes, and you'll be pleased to know I've never recovered," says Plutarch. "I want to point out that 22 dead tributes will never recover from the games he helped create either, but I only say, good, so you're the head game maker this year. That must be a big honor. Between you and me, there weren't many takers for the job," he says. "So much responsibility as to how the games turn out. Yeah, the last guy's dead, I think. He must know about Seneca Crane, but he doesn't look the least bit concerned. Are you planning the Quarter Quell games already, I say? Oh, yes. Well, they've been in the works for years, of course. Arenas can't be built in a day, but the, shall we say, flavor of the games is being determined now. Believe it or not, I've got a strategy meeting tonight," he says. Plutarch steps back and pulls out a gold watch on the chain from a vest pocket. He flips open the lid and sees the time and frowns. "I'll have to be going soon." He turns the watch so I can see the face. "It starts at midnight." "That seems late for," I say, but then something distracts me. Plutarch has run his thumb across the crystal face of the watch, and for just a moment an image appears, glowing as if lit by candlelight. It's another Mockingjay, exactly like the pin on my dress, only this one disappears. He snaps the watch close. "That's very pretty," I say. "Oh, it's more than pretty. It's one of a kind," he says. "If anyone asks about me, say I've gone home to bed. The meetings are supposed to be kept secret, but I thought it'd be safe to tell you." Yes, your secret's safe with me," I say. As we shake hands, he gives a small bow, a common gesture here in the capital. "Well, I'll see you next summer at the games, Katniss. Best wishes on your engagement, and good luck with your mother. I'll need it," I say. So after Plutarch leaves Katniss, she goes looking for Peeta, and people are still stopping her, congratulating her, yada yada yada, but she can't stop thinking about Plutarch and the watch he showed her. And on page 83, she has a passage that says, "There's something strange about it, almost clandestine, but why? Maybe he thinks someone else will steal his idea of putting a disappearing Mockingjay on a watch face. Yes, he's probably paid a fortune for it, and now he can't show it to anyone because he's afraid someone will make a cheap knockoff version, only in the capital." I have no idea what I thought of the scene the first time I read this book, but it's kind of funny knowing the end of the book and knowing what Plutarch's intentions are in this scene. And also, shout out to Philip Seymour Hoffman in the movie who plays Plutarch. May he rest in peace. Because also, another just standout performance in the whole movie series. Total scene stealer. And all the scenes that he has with Donald Sutherland, so freaking good. Like, those are two masters at work. But anyway, we're not talking about the movie yet. We're talking about the book. Where was I? Oh yeah, Katniss finds Peeta at the table with all the elaborate decorated cakes. And the bakers from the kitchen are now tripping over themselves to answer his questions. And shortly after that, Effie comes over, telling them it's time to start saying goodbyes since they have to be back on the train in about an hour. And it's one of the few times Katniss loves Effie's compulsive punctuality. And side note, I love that phrase. I'm going to start using it more, mostly to describe myself since I've been known to freak out if I think I'm going to be a few minutes late for something. It's the orchestra kid in me. I've had so many directors tell me, early is on time is late. Anyway, Peeta asks Katniss if they should thank Snow since it is his house, but Effie says he's not one for parties, and she's already arranged all the necessary notes and gifts to send him, but like I said earlier, we all know that he just wants to avoid all the Mockingjay accessories. You can't lie to me, Corio. I know how obsessive and petty you are. Anyway, Effie has the whole thing down to a science, and they're on the train at exactly 1 o'clock. As insufferable as Effie can be sometimes, she is really talented when it comes to scheduling things. Like, sometimes I wish Effie was real and that she could organize my life. Haymitch is, of course, very drunk and is deposited into the room by 2 Capitol attendants. Katniss goes to bed, and when she wakes up, Peeta is there. He says that she didn't have any nightmares that night, and thank goodness, she really needs a break from those. Though she did have a happy dream that she was following a Mockingjay with Rue's voice, and then she asked Peeta, like, how come she never knows when he's having a nightmare? And his answer is basically like, he doesn't thrash around like she does, and then he responds with, my nightmares are mostly about losing you, and then I wake up and you're there and it's fine. And again, I don't know why it's a mystery to people that me and so many others love Peeta, but anyway, they are finishing the tour in District 12. They'll have dinner at the mayor's house, and there will be a victory rally in the square during the Harvest Festival. They get ready at the mayor's house, and Katniss is happy to be there since she's been spending more time there since she and Madge have started hanging out more. And Katniss takes Madge out into the woods and tries teaching her to shoot, and Madge tries to teach Katniss to play the piano. And by the way, I could just read a whole novella about Katniss and Madge hanging out between first and second book, because it's good to see Katniss having a friend outside of Gale, because he kind of sucks, and it's good to have a friend that has no ulterior motives. And we also learn here that Madge doesn't seem to be particularly close with her parents, her father obviously being very busy running the district, and her mother often gets really bad headaches that force her to stay in bed for days. And one time Katniss suggested taking her to the Capitol to get cured, but you can't go unless you're invited, because even the mayor has limited privileges. Anyway, when Katniss is done getting ready, she has about an hour left to kill, so she goes looking for Madge. On her way, she passes the mayor's study and peeks her head in to say hi, and this is when she sees something she's definitely not supposed to. On one of the screens, she sees that there is an update in the situation in District 8. And of course, I have to just read the last bit of the chapter, because that's on theme for this episode. An announcer I've never seen before appears. It's a woman with graying hair and a hoarse, authoritative voice. She warns that conditions are worsening, and a Level 3 alert has been called. Additional forces are being sent to District 8, and all textile production has ceased. They cut away from the woman to the main square in District 8. I recognize it because I was there only last week. There are still banners with my face waving from the rooftops. Below them, there's a mob scene. The square is packed with screaming people, their faces hidden with rags and homemade masks throwing bricks. Buildings burn. Peacekeepers shoot into the crowd, killing at random. I've never seen anything like it, but I can only be witnessing one thing. This is what President Snow calls an uprising. And with that being said, that is the end of the chapter, and we come to the end of the episode. Woo! So, next time we will be talking about chapters 7 to 9. And things are just going to get crazier from here. Don't forget to check out the Instagram poll so you guys can vote what my next book tag episode will be. link to the Instagram in the show notes. Also, link to my TikTok and YouTube channel, where I occasionally make bonus content. And, oh, by the way, my friend Lily, who wrote the jingle for this podcast, has been uploading more cool stuff onto her Instagram, so that'll be linked in the show notes too. Of course, don't forget to check that out. And yeah, with all that being said, stay cool, everyone. We're still in the middle of a heat wave. I'm gonna go swimming now because it's still hot out, and and it's high tide, so gonna go for it. I hope you all have a great day/night. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!